Hello everyone, and welcome back to the fourth episode of my Awkward Routes series. You're joining me here at Barnet the Spires, as we start our journey here to travel on not one, but two bus services in London that I would consider to be awkward, and I'm sure you will as well. You may have already guessed what these two routes are, and given these are London's two least used bus services, are rather fitting when it comes to the topic of this series. So come join me as we ride the 389 and 399. 389 and 399 I'm sure both spring to mind when you think of awkward bus routes, even though they both have clear reasons behind why they exist. The 389 operates as a circular route to and from Barnet the Spires via High Barnet Station, Underhill and Western Way, whilst the 399 operates as a circular service to and from Barnet the Spires via Monk Hadley and Hadley Wood Station. They're both hourly services which operate for only 5 hours a day from just before 10 am to just after 3 pm, from Mondays to Saturdays. They don't operate on a Sunday. These two routes are notorious as always featuring in the yearly top 10 list of the least used bus routes in London. In the period 2022 to 23, the 389 saw 10,677 passengers, giving it the number 2 spot on the list, whilst the 399 saw 8,381 passengers in the same period, taking the crown as London's least used bus route. To get some insight behind how the 389 and 399 operate, they start off with a bus that has come off the 299 in the morning, which dead runs from Cockfosters to Camlet Way, forming the 9:56 399 journey towards Barnet the Spires, although it only completes part of the route. The bus then changes its blinds and becomes the 389, forming the 10:17 journey towards Western Way, which does one loop of the service back to Barnet the Spires, where it changes back into the 399, which does the full loop through Hadley Wood back to Barnet the Spires. This setup continues until the 14:45 departure from Barnet the Spires, where the last 399 of the day does part of the loop to Hadley Wood Station, before dead running back to Cockfosters where it can start afternoon duties on the 299. The 389 and 399 have largely shared histories, despite them operating as two separate services. The reason for their shared histories stems back to the 90s, when the two of them at one stage ran as an all-in-one route. Let me explain. The 399, the elder sibling of the two, commenced operation on the 3rd of April 1993, operating as a circular service to and from Barnet General Hospital via Hadley Wood under Welwyn and Hatfield line out of their base in North Mimms. The service took in Wellhouse Lane, Wood Street, Stapleton Road and Salisbury Road, before following what is the present 399 round the current loop to the Spires via Hadley Wood, before going back in on itself into Barnet Hospital. It wasn't until the 25th of June 1994 which saw the introduction of what would inevitably become part of the 389, where the 399 was discontinued between Barnet High Street and Barnet Hospital, with the journeys instead projected to run to and from Barnet Western Way, where the 389 currently hesitates on its current circular route to and from Barnet the Spires. The services eventually split into two on the 6th of April 1996, with the newly numbered 389 taking on the Western Way to Barnet High Street section with a minor extension to the Spires, whilst the 399 was solely responsible for the Hadley Wood section once again. Now I'll get into the first of the two routes that I will be discussing in this video, which is the 389. The shortest route in London when measured to Western Way, the 389 loop is just over 3 miles long and only takes 22 minutes to complete. As for the areas that the 389 serves, we'll start off with Western Way, where the 389 hesitates towards the southern end of Barnet, on a small residential road mostly isolated from the rest of the road network in and around Barnet. There's not a whole lot to say about the terminus of the route. Having said that, if you walk 30 or so metres you reach the Dollis Valley Green Walk, a 10-mile path stretching across the London Borough of Barnet that takes in Moat Mount just south of Borehamwood, the areas of Totteridge and Whetstone, Woodside Park, West Finchley, Mill Hill East, Henley's Corner and the Hampstead Heath extension. There are a few green areas dotted around the Western Way terminus, which include Wyatt's Farm open space and Barnet playing fields. As you creep up into Underhill, you'll start to notice the regeneration that has occurred within the Dollis Valley estate, which the 389 touches the fringes of. Barnet Council have made it their duty to replace failing estates that sprawled up as we left the war years, which include the Graham Park estate in Colindale and the West Hendon estate in West Hendon. The regeneration of the Dollis Valley estate is one of those targeted, and this has included the construction of 631 new homes access to improved higher education opportunities within the local area, a new multi-purpose community space, and a new communal garden. Whilst the 326 will likely do most of the heavy lifting when it comes to new passenger journeys being made from the Dollis Valley estate, who knows? Maybe the 389 will see a few extra passengers in the coming years. Powering up Barnet Hill, we reach High Barnet Station, the terminus of the High Barnet branch on the Northern Line in Travelcard Zone 5. High Barnet Station opened on the 1st of April 1872 under the Great Northern Railway on a branch line off their main Finsbury Park to Edgware via Highgate route. The 1921 Railways Act drew up the four big companies, and so the High Barnet branch was transferred to the London North Eastern Railway in 1923, but as part of the Northern Heights project in the late 1930s, the line north of East Finchley was electrified and so became part of the Northern Line in 1940. Nowadays the station sees trains running at frequent intervals to and from the City and West End, and High Barnet Station sees 3 to 4 million passengers a year. As you progress up Barnet Hill and onto the High Street, you reach St John the Baptist Church, which TfL shortened to just Barnet Church, for the 34 which terminates at Fitzjohn's Avenue. St John the Baptist Church stands at the junction between Wood Street and Barnet High Street, acting as a communal area with a few shops and some benches nestled behind the church on the church passage. The church is believed to have been constructed in the mid-13th century in the central point of Chipping Barnet. The church has seen numerous renovations through the years, when it was renovated by William Butterfield in 1871, and when a fire in 1974 almost sent the entire church ablaze, which led to a new choir vestry being constructed after the previous one did catch fire, and the replacement of the entrance doors underneath the tower with new glass ones. Just around the corner from Barnet Church you reach the High Street. The area is known as Chipping Barnet, although is more commonly referred to as High Barnet. The name Barnet is derived from the Old English word barnet, meaning land that was cleared by burning. Barnet as a town has records dating back to 1070, but like with many places, didn't see rapid urbanisation until a railway was built into the area, more specifically the Great Northern Railway, which we touched on earlier. Barnet belongs to the county of Hertfordshire until 1965, when the East Barnet and Barnet urban districts were abolished as part of the London Government Act 1963, and were incorporated into London. The High Street at the moment is home to a selection of restaurants, banks, supermarkets and fast food chains. It's just your typical high street. On the High Street, passengers can make connections to the 34 towards Palmer's Green and Walthamstow, the 107 towards Edgware and New Barnet, and the 307 towards Enfield and Brimsdown. Turning the corner, we meet Barnet the Spires, the place where the 389 transitions into a 399. The Spires, compared to most areas I've passed through that have shopping centres, is noticeably smaller, and the shopping centre only receives about 70,000 visitors per week. The shopping centre opened in 1988 upon what was the old High Barnet Methodist Church, which had two steeples that the Spires still adorns, so the old site hasn't been lost to history just yet. The Spires has your bog standard shops that you'd find in most shopping centres, such as a Poundland, a Waterstones, and a few clothing shops. It's what is located next to the Spires, the Barnet Market, which is a bit more interesting. A weekly market first established by King John back in 1199, when King John issued a charter for the market to be held in Barnet. The market sees 50 or so stalls dotted across Chipping Close and outside the Spires on Stapleton Road every Wednesday and Sunday. Transport links wise, at the Spires, you can change for several bus routes which will whiz you to all different sides of Barnet, which include the 234, 326 and 383. Now, this is the point at which we'll leave the 389, so now we'll move on to the 399. The 399 is the older sibling of the two routes, and operates to and from Barnet the Spires via Hadley Wood. Slightly longer than the 389, the loop is 6 miles long, although it only takes a little longer than the 389, at 26 minutes per loop. As we leave Barnet the Spires, we turn onto the Great North Road and progress into Hadley Green, a 10-hectare village common that straddles between Great North Road and the Hadley Green Road. It's considered a site of metropolitan importance for nature conservation. For those interested in taking walks along trails, you can access the London Loop from Hadley Green Road, which will take you into King George Fields and further on. There's a pond situated next to the Great North Road on the green, which when the weather is playing ball I'm sure makes for a nice place to sit down and feed the ducks. As you turn the corner onto Drury Road on the 399, you'll soon stumble upon the village of Monken Hadley. The name Hadley is derived from the word heathery, which means a woodland clearing covered in heather, and the prefix of the village name Monken alludes to the idea that monks of Walden Abbey possessed the village. Monken Hadley has historical significance, as this was where the Battle of Barnet occurred. An important battle in the Wars of the Roses between Edward VI and the Earl of Warwick on the morning of 14th of April 1471, and it's been claimed that Hadley Green just around the corner was where most of the battle occurred. Monken Hadley nowadays is a small suburban development on the fringe of Greater London, with a population of 2,456 in 2001. I find the area to be so tranquil and appealing to be in. It's such a contrast compared to the hustle and bustle of Barnet High Street a mile or so south of the area. The last area we'll be looking at in this video is Hadley Wood. Hadley Wood is a suburb also on the fringes of Greater London in the London Borough of Enfield, located on the grounds of what were the historical hunting grounds of Enfield Chase. The hunting grounds were divided up, and much of what is now considered Hadley Wood was bought by English lawyer Francis Russell. The land Russell owned passed through numerous owners before ending up in the hands of a farmer named Charles Jack. As landowner, Charles Jack allowed development to occur within present-day Hadley Wood, and for a station to be established by the Great Northern Railway on the East Coast Main Line on the 1st of May 1885. The station saw a reconstruction in 1959 to allow for 2 extra tracks to pass through Hadley Wood Station. Unlike High Barnet, which has frequent Northern Line services in and out of central London, at Hadley Wood, services are a little more infrequent, with 2 trains an hour towards Welwyn Garden City and 2 trains an hour towards Moorgate. According to a Watford Observer article from 2002, it was claimed that 1 in 6 who live in Hadley Wood are millionaires, and so I imagine this is why there has been much in the way of scepticism surrounding a more frequent bus service being established. How many people living in Hadley Wood would choose to take the bus over driving? Like with Monk and Hadley down the road and the area around Weston Way on the 389, Hadley Wood is equally full of green spaces, which include Covert Way Nature Reserve, located alongside the East Coast Main Line, and Hadley Woods. To the edge of Hadley Wood, where the 399 meets Cockfosters Road, passengers can interchange with the 298 towards Arnos Grove, Southgate, Cockfosters, and Potter's Bar, and for the 610 towards Potter's Bar and Luton. For the most part, Hadley Wood mostly comprises of quiet roads with large houses dotted throughout, although it's unlikely we'll see much else built around Hadley Wood unless large swathes of the existing houses were to be demolished, as residents of Hadley Wood have been vehement opponents to any construction on the Greenbelt. Therefore, when it comes to my next segment, I can't really see that much in the way of passenger growth occurring on the 399 as a result, and this will likely remain as London's least used bus route for the foreseeable future. So how can the 389 and 399 be made less awkward in the future? Well, it'd be difficult to do so under the current setup, as the 389 and 399 both use one bus that has come off the 299 to utilise during the day on Monday to Saturday, and so any increases in frequency would likely mean an establishment of 2 separate services, in the sense that each route would be delegated their own bus or buses, and there would be no interworking between the 2 routes. The disadvantage of doing this is that the current setup is quite cost effective, where the bus that isn't necessary on the 299 duties during the day is instead better utilised in providing a service on the 389 and 399, which would likely only see demand during the daytime anyway. By adding more buses, operating costs would rise, and if the number of fare-paying passengers doesn't proportionally rise with it, then it would make it more difficult to justify a different setup to the status quo long term. You could draw connections to the H2 and H3, where they serve similar suburbia in the form of Hampstead Garden Suburb, but yet the H2 operates every 12 minutes during the day. I'm not so sure on whether they would be worthy comparisons though, as Hampstead Garden Suburb is a lot more isolated from a railway station in comparison to Hadley Wood, which has one located in the area, and Hampstead Garden Suburb tends to be more densely populated than Hadley Wood. Hadley Green and Monk and Hadley have had the short end of the stick when it comes to the number of buses serving the area compared to High Barnet and Barnet Church, so I think some amendments to public transport in the area could be made. Extending something from Barnet the Spires to Hadley Green would be a good idea, as the Spires stand can get overcrowded, so there could always be a testing of the waters with the 383 being removed from the stand and extended to Hadley Green. This suggestion would provide 4 buses an hour up to Hadley Green during the day alongside the 84B and 399, so much better than the status quo. But what would that look like for London's least used bus route, an even smaller number of passengers using the service? Going back to how we could improve the 389 and 399, maybe there could be a look into improving hospital access for those living on both routes. But my question is it really necessary? The 389 save the Western Way section parallels the frequent 107, 263 and 307, which provide links from Underhill up to Barnet Hospital. The 399 might have a slightly better case, although I suspect the justification now could be that the, albeit long-winded, 84B provides the link for those living in Monk and Hadley, but then there's no link for anyone living in Hadley Wood. Having said that, the controversial 384 changes that were pushed through in August of 2020 have left some roads in and around the spires without the bus route in both directions, so maybe one of the two could be used to plug that gap, as it would be better than nothing, even if a lot more infrequent. Although there could be the argument that 384 being rerouted back to serving the spires in both directions would be a better use of resources in this case. It's clear that there won't be a simple solution as to how to improve the 389 or 399 anytime soon, so I imagine in the meantime they will be remaining as is. So my question to you is, what do you think about the 389 and 399? Have you used these two routes before? What suggestions do you have to improve either of these services? Leave them down in the comments, as I love to read and respond to them all. Well, that's it from me. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to like, subscribe and share this video, as this massively helps me out when you do. And anyway, see you all in the next video. Take care, folks.